Hello, everyone. Persephone Crestomancy here. Welcome back to the Storyteller's Corner, episode 21, and Merry Christmas to you all. I know, we're just starting we're just starting with December, but still, 'tis the season to be jolly. So deck the halls with boughs of holly. And I have a very special story in store for you guys this lovely month of December. Now, given what I am wearing currently, I know some of you are probably thinking, Persephone, now it's no secret that you try and dress in accordance to the stories that you read to us on this series. But you just wished everyone Merry Christmas. And the outfit you're wearing seems very fantasy-esque rather than Christmassy. Is there a reason for that? And to which I can say, yes, there is a reason why I'm dressed like this, because it does tie in with the story. Now, when someone mentions Christmas, or December, or the holiday season to you, what first comes to mind? Is it Frosty the Snowman? Hot chocolate? White Christmases? Christmas carols? Or perchance, does the figure Santa Claus come to mind during the Christmas season? I mean, it's impossible not to think of good St. Nicholas this time of year, as he's that one figure who comes out once a year. And on Christmas Eve, he flies in his sleigh pulled by 8 magic flying reindeer, 9 if you include Rudolph. And he gives presents to all the good girls and boys. I mean, it's hard not to think of. Now, as a little kid growing up, I loved Christmas time. I mean, I love all the holidays in general, but as a little kid, I always got excited for Christmas because it was that day of the year where Christmas presents would appear underneath the tree, and I always strive to be very good that time of year. And I mean, I still strive to, and not just in December. Hi, Michelle. Welcome to the story. Just going to do a little bit of commentary and then we'll get into the story. But yeah, Santa Claus is the iconic figure of December. Would I miss your stuff in the world? Well, thank you. Got all dressed up for the occasion, despite the fact that some people are probably going to be saying, you look more dressed for fantasy rather than a Christmas story. Because something I try and do is whenever I read a story, I try and dress for it. I got a style in my eye, but you made going through the pain worth it. A style in your eye. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, hopefully you feel better soon, and I'm terribly sorry you have to go through with that. But yeah, Santa Claus is the iconic figure of December, giving presents to all the good girls and boys. And in Germany, they have a counter figure to Santa Claus. Thank you. Well, you're welcome. And I hope you have a very Merry Christmas. Speaking of very Merry Christmas, I got my mug of hot chocolate, my special Christmas mug, my Santa Claus mug. Get it? Because it's cats and I like cats. The cocoa's not really hot, but still good. But yeah, in Germany, they have a counterpart to Santa Claus. Ever wonder what happens to the naughty children? Well, in Germany, they have a very spooky figure that is downright terrifying, known as Krampus, which is spelled like this and I'm leaving it in the chat, Krampus, Krampus. And Krampus is a very scary, monstrous figure, and he is the opposite of Santa. Where Santa Claus gives presents to the good children, Krampus punishes the naughty children. And how this happens is done through various ways. In some cases, he beats them with a switch, which a switch is basically a thin stick that with a bit of a whip to it. Krampus will either punish naughty children with a switch, he'll whip them with chains, or he'll kidnap them. And what he does does with them once he kidnaps said naughty children varies depending on who you ask from telling to telling. In some cases, he drowns them. Some cases, he beats them once again. Other cases, he drags them to hell. And in some cases, he eats the naughty children. So, yeah. If that's not incentive to behave a bit more as a little kid, I don't know what is. But Krampus is a Yuletide boogeyman. And every culture in the world has their own boogeyman, which, according to my book, Beverton's Phantasmagoria, a compendium of monsters, myths, and legends, boogeymen were used as a way to get children to behave, like, eating their soup or going to bed on time. Like your outfit. Well, thank you. Again, it's in tune. It's fitting for what I'm about to read to you guys. But on the bright side, I hit 300 subscribers, and I wouldn't have done without the help from my friends and the support and kind words that includes you. Well, thank you, and congratulations to 300 subscribers. Here's to many, many more. I'm currently at 772, but I'm quite content with that, and thank you to all the subscribers. 772 of you. And as I mentioned before in the community tab, once we reach 800, I will do a live stream talking about monsters. And speaking of monsters, Krampus, Yuletide Boogeyman. In this book, it describes boogeymen as such. I just need to find the right page for it. There we go. 16 to 17. This is one of the many books I have that allows me to read, that allows me to get ideas for ASMR, since I do ASMR. You should be at 1K subs, right? No, not so. I gain a few subs and then I'll lose some, and it's a very slow process. And sometimes I get surges. Like there was one time where I went to work and then I came back with like 700 or 600 subs. It was nuts. But yeah, I'm content with 772, and thank you so much for being here. But anyway, sorry. The attention span of a coked up goldfish wearing tinsel. Anyway, but Krampus, Yuletide Boogeyman. In this book, boogeymen, black men, Lulus, and Cocos, these are all various boogeymen from folklore, are described as such. In many countries, the bogeyman or boogeyman they are spelled like this: bogeyman and boogeyman. Boogeyman. Hello. Hi, Matt. Matt, welcome. Just doing a little bit of commentary before I get into her reading the story to you guys. But this ties into my story, fittingly enough. Let me just get this going. Alrighty. But yeah. In many countries, the bogeyman or boogeyman is a ghostly monster of which children are scared. He is imagined as hiding behind a bedroom door or under the bed. And any of you ever familiar with the monster in the closet? Yeah. In Holland, he is thought to hide underwater. The term has become a metaphor for something or someone of which we have an irrational fear. Even sport fans refer to a bogey team, which their side has difficulty in beating. Parents often use the bogeyman as a way to discipline misbehaving children, or children who bite their nails, suck their thumbs, etc., telling them that the bogeyman will get you. Some believe the word originated with a fear of Old Boney, Napoleon Bonaparte, who was nicknamed the Bony Man by the British. Others believe that its origins in the Middle English bug or bogle or Welsh bug mean hobgoblin or ghost. Again, the Bugis pirates of the Straits of Malacca may have been called boogiesmen by returning sailors. The most accepted origin for bogeyman as a devil links it to the Slavic bog, translates to God. English cognates were bugaboo, bugaboo, bugbear, and bogobo, names that used to designate the pagan image carried in the procession of the maypole for May Day games. Humbug from the Norse hum, night, and bog or bogey originally meaning a night spirit. If you do not believe in something fantastical, you may say humbug. The word bug from the Welsh bwg, spirit, was applied to insects because of the belief that insects were souls in search of rebirth. Other words derived from bog are the Scottish bogle, Yorkshire bogart, English poog, poke, and puck, Irish puka, and Welsh pucka, and the Danish derivation spog and Swedish spoka, we have spook. It goes on in more great lengths, but needless to say, you get the idea. Krampus is, in Germany, is a Christmas boogeyman and is used as incentive for kids to be good because, as mentioned before, good children get presents, naughty children get captured by Krampus. In America, we do not have Krampus. Instead, if a child is naughty, they usually don't get presents. Or they get a lump of coal. I'm just trying to make sure my laptop doesn't overheat. Lore of children's worst nightmare. Oh, and trust me, Matt, there are many boogeymen around the world. At one point when I was in school, I believe grade school at least, I even tried researching them. And they come in various shapes and sizes. Like one of them is basically a giant owl with a copper implement, as it were. That's funny. I was just listening to a song called Jungle Boogie, lol. You are the sweetest thing and will always be on the nice list. Well, thank you. I certainly try my best, but yeah, I have my flaws. But thank you. I was told about the Krampus when I was a kid from my grandpa. My mom and dad weren't happy with him. I mean, hey, he was giving you some folklore. That's always a win in my book. But yeah. So we have Santa Claus, and in German folklore we have Krampus. But tell me, have you ever wondered how Santa Claus came to be? Now, in real life, granted, there was a figure known as Saint Nicholas. Let me see. But sorry, just wanted to make sure. But yes, in real life, there was a fellow called Saint Nicholas. He was a Christian bishop, and he was often called Nicholas the Wonder Worker. And from him, we eventually got Santa Claus. But there are various adaptations of the story of Santa Claus. Now, if you're like me, and if you ever grew up watching holiday specials, chances are, as a little kid, you grew up watching various Rankin Bass holiday specials. As a little girl, I grew up on these plenty, and I can name at least five of them to you. Santa Claus is Coming to Town, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, The Little Drummer Boy, Cricket on the Hearth, and Jack Frost. And once I eventually got some money, glad to see we're all here after Krampusnacht. Also, I believe Krampus was more prevalent in Austria rather than Germany. I always thought it was Germany that he originated from, but yeah. And Krampusnacht, I'm not fully fluent in German. I know a little bit, but not a lot. But Krampusnacht, Night of Krampus, which in Germany and possibly Austria, Krampus, while he is an intimidating figure, he's often treated like a celebrity. At least in those parts of the world, which again, I find it fascinating. Like, every culture of the world has their celebrations of Christmas. I find that amazing. And as I mentioned before, I watched a lot of Rankin Bass specials. And while Rankin Bass did produce one adaptation of the story of Santa Claus, it's more pronounced like Krampusnacht. Sorry. Oh, Krampusnacht. I split them separately because I know Nacht. Nacht is night in German. So Krampusnacht. or Krampusnacht. Sorry. Learning something new every day. But yeah, we have Santa Claus is Coming to Town. That gives us one version of Santa Claus's story. But there is another. And I am, of course, referring to none other than The Life and the Adventures of Santa Claus by L. Frank Baum. Now, this story is not like other Christmas stories. This one has magic, monsters, and fairies, having a Tolkien-esque feel to it. Now I know I've never read the book. This will be my first time reading it, in fact. But I know of the story because I had two film adaptations. One being done by Rankin Bass in the stop motion format, and then the second being a 2000 adaptation by Universal Studios. This was done in 2D animation. I saw... Sorry, the cats are being naughty. The cats are being naughty and they're irking my mom. Terribly sorry. Anyway, but while I saw the Rankin Bass version of the story a little less, I saw the 2D animated one more. And it is my mom's copy of The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus that I will be reading to you guys. Now, the story is a fairly moderate read, much like Pinocchio, consisting of 22 chapters. However, if I were to read the entire thing, we'd be here all day. So, much like with Pinocchio, I will... And there go my speakers finally, because... heaven forbid. However, much like with Pinocchio, I'm going to be splitting the story of the life and adventures of Santa Claus into 3 parts. And it's fitting, because the story itself is divided into three segments. Santa Claus's childhood, his adulthood, and then the third and final part is his old age. So, this first part we will be reading... So, the first part of the story we will be reading about Santa Claus's childhood. But now, if the name L. Frank Baum sounds familiar, it should, because this is the author who brought us The Wizard of Oz and the books that followed it. And yes, there are more books to the Wizard of Oz series. I have 2 of them. And while Santa Claus isn't a prevalent character in the Oz series, he does make an appearance at Ozma's birthday. I of course refer to the wiki page when I was doing research for the Agawas, which are a monster that show up in this book. And so, yes, since it is the December season, I thought it'd be fitting if we read a little Christmas story. So, again, this has fairies, monsters, and magic to it, and hence the reason why I dressed in a more fantasy-esque manner. But I think you guys will enjoy it, and I'm certainly going to enjoy it. I enjoyed the film adaptation, so the book is going to be just as good. And L. Frank Baum is quite creative. Messed up in his own way, but creative. I mean, in The Wizard of Oz, there's a princess who changes heads like makeup. Like, she has one head with blue hair and green eyes, and one hair with brown hair and orange eyes, etc., etc. And then, of course, the Wicked Witch of the West dying via being melted by a bucket of water. And all right, the song is over, but yes. And now this is illustrated, and I will try and show you the pictures to the best of my ability. But again, this book is my mom's, and I don't want to break it or tear it in any way. And eventually, when I can, I will get my own copy. So, this is The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus by L. Frank Baum, author of The Wonderful Wizard of Oz. The first book, Youth, Santa Claus's childhood, his youth. Chapter 1st, Burzee. Have you heard of the great forest of Burzee? Nurse used to sing of it when I was a child. She sang of the big tree trunks standing close together, with their roots intertwining below the earth and their branches intertwining above it, of their rough coating of bark and queer meaning odd, gnarled limbs, of the bushy foliage that roofed the entire forest, save where the sunbeams found a path through which to touch the ground in little spots, and to cast weird and curious shadows over the mosses, the lichens, and the drifts of dried leaves. The forest of Burzee is mighty and grand and awesome to those who steal beneath its shade. Coming from the sunlit meadows into its mazes, it seems at first gloomy, then pleasant, and afterward filled with never-ending delights. For hundreds of years it has flourished in all its magnificence, the silence of its enclosure unbroken, save for the chirp of busy chipmunks, the growl of wild beasts, and the songs of birds. Yet Burzee has its inhabitants, for all this. Natured people in Nature peopled it in the beginning with fairies, nooks, ryls, and nymphs. As long as the forest stands, it will be a home, a refuge, and a playground for these sweet immortals who revel undisturbed in its depths. Civilization has never yet reached Burzee. Will it ever? I wonder. Chapter 2nd. The Child of the Forest. Once, so long ago our great-grandfathers could scarcely have heard it mentioned, there lived within the forest of Burzee a wood-nymph named Necile. She was closely related to the mighty Queen Zerline, and her home was beneath the shade of a wide-spreading oak. Once every year, on budding day, when the trees put forth their new buds, Necile held the golden chalice of Ak to the lips of the queen, who drank therefrom to the prosperity of the forest. So you see, she was a nymph of some importance, and moreover, it is said that she was highly regarded because of her beauty and grace. When she was created, she could not have told. Queen Zerline could not have told. The great Ak himself could not have told. It was long ago, when the world was new, and nymphs were needed to guard the forests and to minister to the wants of the young trees. Then, on some day not remembered, Necile sprang into being, radiant, lovely, straight and slim as the sapling she was created to guard. Her hair was the color that lines a chestnut burr. Her eyes were blue in the sunlight and purple in the shade. Her cheeks blossomed with the faint pink that edges the clouds at sunset. Her lips were full red, pouting and sweet. For costume she adopted oak leaf green. All the wind nymphs dress in that color, and no other so desirable. Her dainty feet were sandal clad, while her head remained bare, of covering other than her silken tresses. Tresses meaning locks of hair, for those who do not know. Necile's duties were few and simple. She kept hurtful weeds from growing beneath her trees and sapping the earth food required by her charges. She frightened away the gadgals, who took evil delight in flying against the tree trunks and wounding them so that they drooped and died from the poisonous contact. In dry seasons, she carried water from the brooks and pools and moistened the roots of her thirsty dependents. That was in the beginning. The weeds had now learned to avoid the forests where wood nymphs dwelt. The loathsome gadgals no longer dared come nigh. The trees had become old and sturdy and could bear the drought better than when fresh sprouted. So Necile's duties were lessened, and time grew laggard, while succeeding years became more tiresome and uneventful than the nymph's joyous spirit loved. Truly, the forest dwellers did not lack amusement. Each full moon, they danced in the royal circle of the queen. There were also the feast of nuts, the jubilee of autumn tintings, the solemn ceremony of leaf shedding, and the revelry of budding day. But these periods of enjoyment were far apart and left many weary hours between. That a wood nymph should grow discontented was not thought of by Necile's sisters. It came upon her only after many years of brooding, but when once she had settled in her mind that life was irksome, she had no patience with her condition and longed to do something of real interest, and to pass her days in ways hitherto undreamed of by forest nymphs. The law of the forest alone restrained her from going forth in search of adventure. While this mood lay heavy upon pretty Necile, it chanced that the great Ak visited the forest of Burzee, and allowed the wind nymphs, as was their wont, to lie at his feet and listen to the words of wisdom that fell from his lips. Ak is the master woodsman of the world. He sees everything and knows more than the sons of men. That night he held the queen's hand, for he loved the nymphs as a father loves his children, and Necile lay at his feet with many of her sisters, and earnestly hearkened as he spoke. "We live so happily, my fair ones, in our forest glades," said Ak, stroking his grizzled beard thoughtfully, "that we know nothing of the sorrow and misery that fall to the lot of those poor mortals who inhabit the spaces of the earth. They are not of our race, it is true, yet compassion well befits beings so fairly favored as ourselves. Often as I pass by the dwelling of some suffering mortal, I am tempted to stop and banish the poor thing's misery. Yet suffering, in moderation is the natural lot of mortals, and it is not our place to interfere with the laws of nature." "Nevertheless," said the fair queen, nodding her golden head at the master woodsman, "it would not be a vain guess that Ak has often assisted these hapless mortals." Ak smiled. "Sometimes," he replied, "when they are very young, children, the mortals call them, I have stopped to rescue them from misery. The men and women I dare not interfere with. They must bear the burdens nature has imposed on them. But the helpless infants, the innocent children of men, have a right to be happy until they become full grown and able to bear the trials of humanity. So I feel I am justified in assisting them. Not long ago, a year maybe, I found 4 poor children huddled in a wooden hut, slowly freezing to death. Their parents had gone to a neighboring village for food, and had left a fire to warm their little ones while they were absent. But a storm arose and drifted the snow in their path, so they were long on the road. Meantime the fire went out, and the frost crept into the bones of the waiting children." "Poor things," murmured the queen softly. "What did you do?" "I called Nelko, bidding him fetch wood from my forest, and breathe upon it until the fire blazed again, and warmed the little room where the children lay. When they ceased shivering and fell asleep, then they ceased shivering and fell asleep until their parents came." "I am glad you did thus," said the good queen, beaming upon the master, and Necile, who had eagerly listened to every word, echoed in a whisper, "I too am glad." "And this very night," continued Act, "as I came to the edge of Burzee, I heard a feeble cry, which I judged came from a human infant. I looked about me and found, close to the forest, a helpless babe lying quite naked upon the grasses and wailing piteously. Not far away, screened by the forest, crouched Shiegra, the lioness, intent upon devouring the infant for her evening meal." "And what did you do, Ak?" asked the queen breathlessly. "Not much, being in a hurry to greet my nymphs, but I commanded Shiegra to lie close to the babe and give it her milk to quiet its hunger. And I told her to send word throughout the forest, to all beasts and reptiles, that the child should not be harmed." "I am glad you did thus," said the good queen again, in a tone of relief, but this time Necile did not echo her words, for the nymph, filled with a strange resolve, had suddenly stolen away from the group. Swiftly her lithe form darted through the forest paths until she reached the edge of mighty Burzee, when she paused to gaze curiously about her. Never until now had she ventured so far, for the law of the forest had placed nymphs in its inmost depths. Helpless Babe sounds like a prog rock band named. Maybe, for like an urban fantasy type novel. Now, I've mentioned before that fairies, for the most part, you wouldn't want to mess with them, or if you do interact with them, treat them with the utmost respect, as even the most pleasant ones can backstab you at, at a moment's notice. This book contains fairies who are benevolent, as you can see just by the first few chapters, with Ox saving the infant from being Chiegra's evening meal. One of them is playing with a jingly bell. But yes, so Necile has left has wandered far from the safety of Burzy. Necile knew she was breaking the law, but the thought did not give pause to her dainty feet. She had decided to see with her own eyes this infant Ak had told of, for she had never beheld a child of man. All the immortals are full grown. There are no children among them. Peering through the trees, Necile saw the child lying on the grass, but now it was sweetly sleeping, having been comforted by the milk drawn from Shiegra. It was not old enough to know what peril means. If it did not feel hunger, it was content. Softly the nymph stole to the side of the babe and knelt upon the sward, her long robe of rose-leaf color spreading about her like a gossamer cloud. Her lovely countenance expressed curiosity and surprise, but most of all, a tender, womanly pity. The babe was newborn, chubby and pink. It was entirely helpless. While the nymph gazed, the infant opened its eyes, smiled upon her, and stretched out two dimpled arms. And in another instant, Necile had caught it to her breast and was hurrying with it through the forest paths. Now, in the 2000 film adaptation, it is stated that more contact between mortals and immortals is forbidden. And it already says in the book that she was breaking the law by leaving Burzy. So, she took the little baby. The small little baby. I'm sorry. This makes me happy, though, to read. Chapter 3rd. The Adoption. The master woodsman suddenly rose, with knitted brows. "There is a strange presence in the forest," he declared. And then the queen and her nymphs turned and saw standing before them Necile, with the sleeping infant clasped tightly in her arms, and a defiant look in her deep blue eyes. And thus for a moment they remained, the nymphs filled with surprise and consternation. And for those of you who don't know, consternation is a big word, and it means it's a noun. Feelings of anxiety or dismay, typically at something unexpected. A nymph holding a human baby is definitely unexpected, especially given the law. But the brow of the master woodsman gradually clearing as he gazed intently upon the beautiful immortal who had wilfully broken the law. Then the great Ak, to the wonder of all, laid his hand softly on Necile's flowing locks and kissed her on her fair forehead. "For the first time within my knowledge," said he gently, "a nymph has defied me and my laws. Yet in my heart I can find no word of chiding. What is your desire, Necile?" "Let me keep the child," she answered, beginning to tremble and falling on her knees in supplication. "Here? In the forest of Burzy, where the human race has never yet penetrated?" questioned Act. "Here in the forest of Burzy," replied the nymph boldly. "It is my home, and I am weary for lack of occupation. Let me care for the babe. See how weak and helpless it is. Surely it cannot harm Burzy, nor the master woodsman of the world." "But the law, child, the law!" cried Act sternly. "The law is made by the master woodsman," returned Necile. "If he bids me care for the babe he himself has saved from death, who in all the world dare oppose me?" Queen Zerline, who had listened intently to this conversation, clapped her pretty hands gleefully at the nymph's answer. "You are fairly trapped, O Ak!" she exclaimed, laughing. "Now I pray you, give heed to Necile's petition." The woodsman, as was his habit when in thought, stroked his grizzled beard slowly. Then he said, "She shall keep the babe, and I will give him my protection. But I warn you all that this is the first time I have relaxed the law, so shall it be the last time. Never more to the end of the world shall a mortal be adopted by an immortal. Otherwise would we abandon our happy existence for one of trouble and anxiety. Good night, my nymphs." The knack was gone from their midst, and a seal hurried away to her bower to rejoice over her new-found treasure. We're almost done. Chapter 4th. Claus. Now, what I find interesting is that in the 2D animated adaptation, he's called Nicholas. But in the Rankin Bass version, he's known as Claus. And in this one, he is also called Claus. I think the Rankin Bass version took more stuck closer to the source material, whereas the 2001 added its own twist to it. But I mean, I loved both of them. So, chapter 4th, Claus. The illustrations have been just on the pages thus far, like just the chapters. Another day found Necile's bower the most popular place in the forest. The nymphs clustered around her and the child that lay asleep in her lap, with expressions of curiosity and delight. Not were they wanting in praises for the great act's kindness, and in allowing Necile to keep the babe and to care for it. Even the queen came to appear into the innocent, childish face, and to hold a helpless, chubby baby fist in her own fair hand. "What shall we call him, Necile?" she asked, smiling. "He must have a name, you know." Little did everyone know that the baby would quickly sprout fur and ram horns. This story is now the origin of Krampus. No, I'm sorry, Matt, but no, it's a human baby. It's a human baby. Human babies don't grow fur and horns or get hooves. In order for it to be the origin story of Krampus, it would most likely have to be a satyr child, or it would have to be the result of, well, a thing. But no, this is not the origin story of Krampus. This is the life and adventures of Santa Claus. So, little human baby living with the fairies. So wholesome. Anyway, he must have a name, you know. "Let him be called Claus," answered Necile, "for that means a little one." "Rather let him be called Neclaus," returned the queen, "for that will mean Necile's little one." Some people have spelled this name Niklaus, others Nicholas, which is the reason that Santa Claus is still known in some lands as Saint Nicholas. The nymphs clapped their hands in delight, and Neclaus became the infant's name, although Necile loved best to call him Claus. And in after days, many of her sisters followed her example. And it would have to take place in hell to be the Krampus origin, since that's where his palace is. I have heard that. So again, that's why I said he'd either have to be a satyr baby or he'd have to be the result of something, which I think you know what the something is. So here we go. Just trying to. Oh, my foot fell asleep. It fell asleep. Yes. Okay, so sister's example. Necile gathered the softest mosses in all the forest for Claus to lie upon, and she made his bed in her own bower. Of food the infant had no lack. The nymphs searched the forest for bell udders, which grow upon the goa tree, and when opened are found to be filled with sweet milk. And the soft-eyed does willingly gave a share of their milk to support the little stranger, while Shiegra, the lioness, often crept stealthily into Necile's bower and purred softly as she lay beside the babe and fed it. How cool would that be? Have a lioness mother. I love Shiegra. The lioness. So the little one flourished and grew big and sturdy day by day, while Necile taught him to speak and to walk and to play. His thoughts and words were sweet and gentle, for the nymphs knew no evil, and their hearts were pure and loving. He became the pet of the forest, for Act's decree had forbidden beast or reptile to molest him, to do harm. Oh, silver bells, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. My foot fell asleep. Sorry. I'm so sorry. It's full. It's like it's the pins and needles feeling, but to me it also feels like sand. Like I, such a sensation. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. E- trying to read the story. My foot falls asleep. I can't do it anymore. I'm so sorry. I am so sorry. Come on, wake up, foot, wake up, foot. Oh man. Okay. Anyway, so terribly sorry. Technical difficulties. My foot fell asleep. It's the worst way to go. All right, so yeah, for the nymphs knew no evil, and acts decreed forbidden beast or reptile to molest him, do him harm, basically. And he walked fearlessly wherever his will guided him. Presently the news reached the other mortals that the nymphs of Berzee had adopted a human infant, and that the act had been sanctioned by the great Ak. Therefore, many of them came to visit the little stranger, looking upon him with much interest. First the rills, who are first cousins to the wood nymphs, although so differently formed. For the rills are required to watch over the flowers and plants, as the nymphs watch over the forest trees. They search the wide world for the food required by the roots of the flowering plants. While the brilliant colors possessed by the full-blown flowers are due to the dyes placed in the soils by the rills, which are drawn through the little veins in the roots and the body of the plants as they reach maturity. And there was a little more to the little asterisk I forgot to read on par with Niklaus. So some people have spelled this name Niklaus, others Nicholas, which is the reason that Santa Claus is still known in some lands as Saint Nicholas. But of course, Niklaus is his right name, and Claus the nickname given him by his adopted mother, the fair nymph Necile. Here we go. But back on subject. So the nymphs are in charge of taking care of the trees, and the rills are in charge of taking care of the flowers and feeding them good food for flowers and dyeing them. The rills are a busy people, for their flowers bloom and fade continually, but they are merry and light-hearted, and are very popular with the other immortals. Next came the Knooks. For those who don't know, rills is spelled like this. This Ryls. And Knooks is spelled like this. Knooks. Oh, that's a sound. Sound is just Brillo sleeping. So yeah. Rills, Knooks, Nymphs. Next came the Knooks, whose duty it is to watch over the beasts of the world, both gentle and wild. The Knooks have a hard time of it since many of the beasts are ungovernable and rebel against restraint, but they know how to manage them, after all, and you will find that certain laws of the Knooks are obeyed by even the most ferocious animals. Their anxieties make the Knooks look old and worn and crooked, and their natures are a bit rough from associating with wild creatures continually. Yet they are most useful to humanity and to the world in general, as their laws are the only laws the forest beasts recognize, except those of the master woodsman. Then there were the fairies, the guardians of mankind, who were much interested in the adoption of Claus because their own laws forbade them to become familiar with their human charges. There are instances on record where the fairies have shown themselves to human beings and even conversed with them, but they are supposed to guard the lives of mankind, unseen and unknown, and if they favor some people more than others, it is because they have won such distinction fairly, as the fairies are very just and impartial, but the idea of adopting a child of men had never occurred to them, because it was in every way opposed to their laws, so their curiosity was intense to behold the little stranger adopted by Necile and her sister nymphs. Claus looked upon the immortals who thronged around him with fearless eyes and smiling lips. He rode laughingly upon the shoulders of the merry rills. He mischievously pulled the gray beards of the low-browed knooks. He rested his curly head confidently upon the dainty bosom of the fairy queen herself. Bosom, of course, being the chest. And the rills loved the sound of his laughter. The knooks loved his courage. The fairies loved his innocence. The boy made friends of them all and learned to know their laws intimately. No forest flower was trampled beneath his feet, lest the friendly rill should be grieved. He never interfered with the beasts of the forest, lest his friends of the nooks should become angry. The fairies he loved dearly, but, knowing nothing of mankind, he could not understand that he was the only one of his race admitted to friendly intercourse with them. Indeed, Claus came to consider that he alone, of all the forest people, had no like nor fellow. To him the forest was the world. He had no idea that millions of toiling, striving human creatures existed, and he was happy and content. And here's another illustration. This is a very old copy. But I find it extremely fascinating how L. Frank Baum portrays this world. It's fantasy, but it is done in such a unique way. Chapter 5. The Master Woodsman. Years pass swiftly in Burzee, for the nymphs have no need to regard time in any way. Heaving centuries make no change in the dainty creatures. Ever and ever they remain the same, immortal and unchanging. Claus, however, being mortal, grew to manhood day by day. Necile was disturbed, presently to find him too big to lie in her lap, and he had a desire for other food than milk. His stout legs carried him far into Burzee's heart, where he gathered supplies of nuts and berries, as well as several sweet and wholesome roots, which suited his stomach better than the bell udders. He sought Necile's bower less frequently, till finally it became his custom to return thither only to sleep. The nymph, who had come to love him dearly, was puzzled to comprehend the changed nature of her charge, and unconsciously altered her own mode of life to conform to his whims. She followed him readily through the forest paths, as did many of her sister nymphs, explaining as they walked all the mysteries of the gigantic wood, and the habits and natures of the living things which dwelt beneath its shade. The language of beasts became clear to little Claus, but he could never understand their sulky and morose tempers. Only the squirrels, the mice, and the rabbits seemed to possess cheerful and merry natures. Yet, yet would the boy laugh. Yet would the boy laugh when the panther growled and stroked the bear's glossy coat, while the creature snarled and bared its teeth menacingly. The growls and snarls were not for Claus, he well knew. So what did they matter? He could sing the songs of the bees, recite the poetry of the woodflowers, and relate the history of every blinking owl in Burzee. He helped the rills to feed their plants, and the nooks to keep order among the animals. The little immortals regard him as a privileged person, being especially protected by Queen Zerline and her nymphs, and favored by the great Ak himself. One day, the Master Woodsman came back to the forest of Burzee. He had visited in turn all his forests throughout the world, and they were many and broad. Brief question. Will you at some point read a Krampus-centered story? If I am able to find a Krampus story, I will. However, most likely I will just be reading this story as it is divided into 3 parts, and my schedule with real life is extremely busy. So most likely I will not read a Krampus-centered story this year. However, January, the new year, there are still traces of Christmas decorations and stuff left up. So maybe I might read a Krampus story in January, perhaps, if I have the time and I am able to find a day that works. And also, most importantly, if I'm able to find a Krampus story. So, yeah, maybe. I'd like to, but with how December is for me, I think I'll only be able to manage this story and publish at least 4 ASMR videos. I got a second one that I'm gonna upload, and I'm working on the third, and I still need to design the fourth one, which I think I'll release the fourth one on Christmas morning, like a Christmas present to you guys. I think. Anyway, that's all. That's all. Thanks for another time. But yeah, I hope that answered your question, Matt. All right, let's see. Back to the story. All right, so he had visited in turn all his forests throughout the world, though, and they were many and broad. Not until he entered the glade, where the queen and her nymphs were assembled to greet him, did Ak remember the child he had permitted Necile to adopt. Then he found, sitting familiarly in the circle of lovely immortals, a broad-shouldered, stalwart youth who, when erect, standing up straight, stood fully as high as the shoulder of the master himself. Ak paused, silent and frowning, to bend his piercing gaze upon Claus. Their clear eyes met his own steadfastly, and the woodman gave a sigh of relief as he marked their placid depths and read the youth's brave and innocent heart. Nevertheless, as Ak sat beside the fair queen, and the golden chalice filled with rare nectar passed from lip to lip, the master woodsman was strangely silent and reserved, and stroked his beard many times with a thoughtful motion. With morning he called Claus aside in kindly fashion, saying, "Bid good-bye for a time to Necile and her sisters, for you shall accompany me on my journey through the world." The venture pleased Claus, who knew well the honor of being companion of the master woodsman of the world. But Necile wept for the first time in her life, and clung to the boy's neck as if she could not bear to let him go. The nymph, who had mothered this sturdy youth, was still as dainty, as charming, and beautiful as when she had dared face Ak with the babe clasped to her breast. Nor was her love less great. Ak beheld the two clinging together, seemingly as brother and sister to one another, and again he wore his thoughtful look. Chapter 6. Claus discovers humanity. Taking Claus to a small clearing in the forest, the master said, "Place your hand upon my girdle, and hold fast, while we journey through the air. For now we shall encircle the world, and look upon many of the haunts of those men from whom you are descended." And girdle is a garment worn around the waist, and so it's his belt. Belt. Yeah. Sorry. Let's see. You are descended. These words caused Claus to marvel, for until now he had thought himself the only one of his kind upon the earth. Yet in silence he grasped firmly the girdle of the great Ak, his astonishment forbidding speech. Then the vast forest of Burzee seemed to fall away from their feet, and the youth found himself passing swiftly through the air at a great height. Excuse me. Ere long there were spires beneath them, while buildings of many shapes and colors met their downward view. It was a city of men, and Ak, pausing to descend, led Claude to his enclosure. Said the master, "So long as you hold fast to my girdle, you will remain unseen by all mankind, though seeing clearly yourself. To release your grasp will be to separate yourself forever from me and your home in Burzee. One of the first laws of the forest is obedience, and Claus had no thought of disobeying the master's wish. He clung fast to the girdle and remained invisible. Therefore, with each moment passed in the city, the youth's wonder grew. He, who had supposed himself created differently from all others, now found the earth swarming with creatures of his own kind. "Indeed," said Ak, "the immortals are few, but the mortals are many." Claus looked earnestly upon his fellows. There were sad faces, gay and reckless faces. Gay, in this context, meaning happy. That's what it meant before. Gay and reckless faces, pleasant faces, anxious faces, and kindly faces, all mingled in puzzling disorder. Some worked at tedious tasks, some strutted with impudent conceit, and some were thoughtful and grave, while others seemed happy and content. Men of many natures were there, as everywhere, and Claus found much to please him, and much to make him sad. But especially he noted the children, first curiously, then eagerly, then loving. Ragged little ones rolled in the dust of the streets, playing with scraps and pebbles. Other children, gaily dressed lovely in fine clothes, were propped up upon cushions and fed with sugar plums. Yet the children of the rich were not happier than those playing with the dust and pebbles. It seemed to Claus, childhood is the time of man's greatest content, said Ak, following the youth's thoughts. 'Tis during these years of innocent pleasures that the little ones are most free from care. Tell me, said Claus, why do not all these babies fare alike? Because they are born in both cottage and palace, returned the master. The difference in the wealth of the parents determines the lot of the child. Some are carefully tended and clothed in silks and dainty linen, and others are neglected and covered with rags. Yet all seem equally fair and sweet, said Claus thoughtfully. While they are babes, yes, agreed Ak. Their joy is in being alive, and they do not stop to think. And after the years the doom of mankind overtakes them, and they find they must struggle and worry, work and fret to gain the wealth that is so dear to the hearts of men. Such things are unknown in the forest where you were reared. Claus was silent for a moment. Then he asked, why was I reared in the forest, among those who are not of my race? Then Ak, in a gentle voice, told him the story of his babyhood, how he had been abandoned at the forest's edge and left a prey to wild beasts, and how the loving nymph Necile had rescued him and brought him to manhood under the protection of the immortals. Yet I am not of them, said Claus musingly. You are not of them, returned the woodsman. The nymph who cared for you as a mother seems now like a sister to you. By and by, when you grow old and gray, she will seem like a daughter. Yet another brief span, and you will be but a memory, while she remains Necile. Then why, if man must perish, is he born? Demanded the boy. Everything perishes in this Everything perishes except the world itself and its keepers, answered Ak. But while life lasts, everything on earth has its use. The wise seek ways to be helpful to the world, for the helpful ones are sure to live again. Much of this Claus failed to understand fully, but a longing seized him to become helpful to his fellows, and he remained grave and thoughtful while they resumed their journey. They visited many dwellings of men in many parts of the world, watching farmers toil in the fields, warriors dash into a cruel fray, and the merchants exchange their goods for bits of white and yellow metal. And everywhere the eyes of Claus sought out the children in love and pity, for the thought of his own helpless babyhood was strong within him, and he yearned to give help to the innocent little ones of his race, even as he had been succored by the kindly nymph. Day by day the master woodsman and his pupil traversed the earth, Ak speaking but seldom to the youth, who clung steadfastly to his girdle, but guiding him to all the places where he might become familiar with the lives of human beings. And at last they returned to the grand old forest of Burzee, where the master set Claus down within the circle of nymphs, among whom the pretty Necile anxiously awaited him. The brow of the great Ak was now calm and peaceful, but the brow of Claus had become lined with deep thought. Necile sighed at the change of her foster son, who until now had been ever joyous and smiling, and the thought came to her that never again would the life of the boy be the same as before, or this eventful journey with the master. And here you can see Great Ak's girdle. As I said before, it's basically a belt. Chapter 7th. Claus leaves the forest. And here's the illustration. Again, this is a very old copy, but I'm certainly enjoying it. Chapter 7th. Claus leaves the forest. When good Queen Zerline had touched the golden chalice to her fair lips, and it had passed around the circle in honor of the traveller's return, the master woodsman of the world, who had not yet spoken, turned his gaze frankly upon Claus and said, "Well?" The boy understood, and rose slowly to his feet beside Necile. Only once his eyes passed around the familiar circle of nymphs, every one of whom he remembered as a loving comrade, but tears came unbidden to dim his sight, so he gazed thereafter steadfastly at the master. "I have been ignorant," said he simply, "until the great Ak in his kindness taught me who and what I am. You, who live so sweetly in your forest bowers, ever fair and youthful and innocent, are no fit comrades for a son of humanity. For I have looked upon man, finding him doomed to live for a brief space upon the earth, to toil for the things he needs, to fade into old age, and then to pass away as the leaves in autumn. Yet every man has his mission, which is to leave the world better, in some way, than he found it. I am of the race of men, and man's lot is my lot. For your tender care of the poor forsaken babe you adopted, as well as for your loving comradeship during my boyhood, my heart will ever overflow with gratitude. My foster mother," here he stooped and kissed Necile's white forehead, "I shall love and cherish while life lasts. But I must leave you, to take my part in the endless struggle to which humanity is doomed, and to live my life in my own way." "What will you do?" asked the queen gravely. "I must devote myself to the care of the children of mankind, and to try and make them happy," he answered. "Since your own tender care of a babe brought me happiness and strength, it is just and right that I devote my life in pleasure of other babes. Thus will the memory of the loving nymph Necile be planted within the hearts of thousands of my race for many years to come, in her kindly act be recounted in song and in story while the world shall last. Have I spoken well, O master?" Oh, my brother finally woke up. So this is it. Claus is going to find his way in the world and seek his fortune and try to leave the world better than when he found it. I'm not gonna lie, this does give me some Jungle Book vibes. Like cheese. "You have spoken well," returned Ak, and rising to his feet he continued, "Yet one thing must not be forgotten. Having been adopted as the child of the forest and the playfellow of the nymphs, you have gained a distinction which forever separates you from your kind. Therefore, when you go forth into the world of men, you shall retain the protection of the forest, and the powers you now enjoy will remain with you to assist you in your labors. In any need you may call upon the nymphs, the rills, the nooks, and the fairies, and they will serve you gladly. I, the master woodsman of the world, have said it, and my word is the law." Claus looked upon Ak with grateful eyes. "This will make me mighty among men," he replied. "Protected by these kind friends, I may be able to make thousands of little children happy. I will try very hard to do my duty, and I know the forest people will give me their sympathy and help." "We will," said the Fairy Queen earnestly. "We will," cried the Reveals, laughing. "We will," shouted the crooked Knooks, scowling. "We will," exclaimed the sweet nymphs proudly, but Necile said nothing. She only folded Claus in her arms and kissed him tenderly. "The world is big," continued the boy, turning again to his loyal friends, "but men are everywhere. I shall begin my work near my friends, so that if I meet with misfortune, I can come to the forest for counsel or help." With that, he gave them all a loving look and turned away. There was no need to say good-bye, but for him, the sweet, wild life of the forest was over. He went forth bravely to meet his doom, the doom of the race of man, the, the necessity to worry and to work. But Ak knew the boy's heart, was merciful and guided his steps. Coming through Bursey to its eastern edge, Claus reached the laughing valley of Ho-Ha-Ho. On each side were rolling green hills, and a brook wandered midway between them, to wind afar off beyond the valley. At his back was the grim forest. At the far end of the valley was a broad plain. The eyes of the young man, which had now reflected his grave thoughts, became brighter as he stood silent, looking out upon the laughing valley. Then, on a sudden, his eyes twinkled, as stars do on a still night, and grew merry and wide, for at his feet the cowslips and daisies smiled on him in friendly regard. The breeze whistled gaily, happily, as it passed by and fluttered through the locks of his forehead. The brook laughed joyously as it leaped over the pebbles and swept around the green curves of its banks. The bees sang sweet songs as they flew from dandelion to daffodil. The beetles chirruped happily in the long grass, and the sunbeams glinted pleasantly over all the scene. "Here," cried Claus, stretching out his arms as if to embrace the valley, "will I make my home." That was many, many years ago. It has been his home ever since. It is his home now. And that marks the end of Claus's childhood, of his youth. This brings us to Book Who? Book Who? Book 2. His manhood, his adulthood. But that is the end, for now at least, of the life and adventures of Santa Claus. There go my speakers. Sorry about the rattling. One of the cats found a jingle bell to play with. But yes, that was the story of Claus's childhood. And as you can see, it is very fantasy-based, but it is wonderful. And for those who are curious of how the Laughing Valley of Ho Ha Ho is spelled, the Laughing Valley is spelled like this: Ho Ha Ho. That is how it is spelled. Next book goes into detail about his arm wrestling match with Krampus. No, Matt, no Krampus, but we do get something quite scary. We get something almost as scary as Krampus. We get Agawas. And there go my speakers again because my laptop hates me. My laptop is trying to be a Scrooge. Stupid speakers. But yeah, there's no Krampus, Matt. I'm sorry. Though we do get something quite scary. We get Agawas. And Agawas are spelled like this: Awgwas. And according to the wiki, Agawas are described as this. I love this fusion. So, the Agawas are a terrible race of creatures that are neither mortals nor immortals. Gigantic and monstrous, with scowling faces that show their hatred for mankind. Now, next you're going to say there's no 3 magic horses! There's not 3 magic horses. I'm sorry, Matt. But again, we get Agawas, and we get to see Claus. Curses! Yeah, no 3 magic horses in this one, I swear. We really need to find you something else to fixate upon. But yes, that was part 1. Part 2 of this series, I will read of Claus's adulthood. And it is adulthood that we meet the Agawas, the horrible monsters, neither mortal nor immortal. Now, what I find fascinating, because I mentioned before that I have seen the 2 film adaptations, the Rankin Bass one and the 2000 Universal Studio one. I like the depiction of the Agawas in both versions. In the Rankin Bass special, they are very monstrous, hulking monsters. In the 2000 adaptation, they're still monstrous and still hulking. They're still monstrous and hulking, but they look more like rock monsters. Monsters made out of rock. Kind of like gnomes in Return to Oz, because gnomes are rock fairies, essentially. They're earth elementals. Well, for this season, it will probably be Krampus as my fixation. Yeah, the fact that you just want to see Claus get into a fight with Krampus, don't you, Matt? But yeah, so thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed part 1 of the story. Obviously, this book was written in a different time, and so a lot of the words in the story mean something different than what they do now. So, yeah. But in my defense, I have not read this story ever before. This is my first time reading it. And so far, I like it. And as soon as I can, I'm going to get my own copy. And hey, I might just end up with my own copy underneath the Christmas tree this year. Maybe. Who knows? I want them to team up knowing their responsibilities during Christmas! That would be interesting. I think in some folklore, I'm not sure, don't quote me, but I think they might do something like that in other folk tales. And again, Matt, if I was able to find a Krampus story, I would read it. Most likely not this year, because with how busy my schedule is, but maybe some other time. Maybe some other time. Heck, I might even read one in January. And if I could find more boogeyman stories, I'd read those too. Because one of the things with this series is I like reading to you guys fairy tales and stories that you might not have heard of. Stories that are less well known among the mainstream, which I have no shortage. I have a lot of fairy tale books, but I'm always looking and searching for new stories. And I'm even trying to write my own. So, yeah. That was part 1 of Santa's life, his childhood. Any questions, comments? I know Matt is going to comment lots about Krampus. The little child grew fur and became Krampus. This is Krampus's life story now. Yes, it was. So, yeah. But I mean, in regards to Krampus, while he is a hellish, monstrous creature, I do think it is fitting, because his role is to punish the naughty children. I find it interesting. Every culture's folklore and history, there's always something new and different to learn. Also, yeah, you put a flower in my hair. I got it at the Christmas fair, along with this necklace and my earrings. Got fairies and a laughing moon. It seemed fitting that I wear them, considering that I am reading The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus. So there are 2 mainstream film adaptations I might hunt down lesser known adaptations. Well, tell you what. For the 2000 adaptation of The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus, you're gonna have to get that one on Amazon on DVD. And same with The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus, the Rankin Bass version. The only DVD copy I was able to get was a double feature that has The Life and Adventures of Santa Claus and Nestor the Long-Eared Christmas Donkey, which is another good special. But I can find a place where you can stream the Rankin Bass special for free. I'll leave the link in this chat comment for those who want to use it. Magic. 1985 video. Here we go. Just trying to get it to work. There we go. Wait. Wait a sec. Oh, That's the right one. Had to make sure. So here we go. Here is the link. I'll keep you updated on my research. Thank you. So there's the link for those who want to watch the Rankin Bass version of the story, which, again, I believe they're taking more inspiration from the book. As in the 2000 adaptation, Shiegra actually talks, and she and Nassil have a conversation about the little baby Claus, and she actually and Shiegra actually lets Nassil take the baby from her, rather than Nassil in the book and the Rankin Bass version sneaking up and casually committing a swipe of baby. And just like picking up the baby and returning to Brzee holding a baby to her arm. Well, cradling baby, which is wholesome. Kind of funny though. It's like it's like, what do you got there, Nassil? A baby, which is wholesome. And we'll watch this and then I'll end the live stream, I promise. But something I find interesting in the 2000s adaptation, when Nassil and Shiegra are having their conversation as she's holding the baby, it's like, you have fathered many young, Shiegra. As an immortal, I can never have children. Which I find that interesting. In the book, it doesn't say that they can't have children, like, of their own. But I find it interesting that they included that in the 2000 adaptation, because we already knew that in this book that immortals are born just as they are. They're never children. There's no children among them. Actually, I'm sorry. Again, attention span of a coked up goldfish, but there are no children among them. So yeah, they can't have children. And so yeah, I'm sorry about that. Slight misconception. Finally I'm able to get some Christmas cheer. My brain's all because I've been working so much. But I'm glad to have the money. Lets me buy Christmas presents. Mental note: I need to make some more hot chocolate. This is cold chocolate. This is just cold chocolate. It's still yummy though. It's dark chocolate. Given to wonder why. So yeah. Remember to take it easy once in a while. You deserve you time. Oh, I know, but my work schedule is extremely busy. And then I have the ASMR that I'm trying to make. I am having a little bit of Christmas cheer time. I got my hot cocoa. I'm going to watch some Christmas specials. And once we get our Christmas tree, I'll be decorating the tree. Going to make sugar cookies. I'm just excited. And I have presents to wrap. That's another perk of adulthood. It's like when you get money, you can buy Christmas presents for people. They like surprising people. Watch Gremlins. I don't want to watch Gremlins. I will most likely instead watch Rankin Bass Christmas specials. Best Christmas movie ever! But Gremlins doesn't involve Christmas things. Oh, there's someone at the door. Drink loading. And who should come but Cosmic? She wanted inside. But yeah. That'll just about do it for this live stream. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for the 772 subscribers. Again, once we get to 800, I'll do a live stream. I just need the free time. Yes, it does. It's a very Christmas-heavy movie. I've seen Gremlins only once, and no, it's not really Christmassy. So, in my opinion at least, you do you. With your holiday traditions, you do you. But I'm going to just watch my Rankin Bass Christmas specials. I will watch Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and Frosty the Snowman and all the other Christmas specials I grew up with. So, yeah. Tis the season to be jolly. Do whatever you like that makes you happy, within reason, of course. And remember, you better watch out. You better not cry and you better not pout because Santa Claus is coming. So, anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye! Merry Christmas!